The whispers cut through the air like a knife, piercing Zara Jenkins's heart as she stood frozen at the edge of Silver City's annual spring dance of 1878. The New Mexico Territory's most anticipated social event of the season had transformed the town hall into a whirlwind of color and music, but for Zara, it might as well have been a firing squad. Lord Almighty, did she stuff 2 feather pillows under that dress? A woman's voice carried from nearby, followed by poorly concealed laughter. Zara's cheeks burned as she smoothed down the robin's egg-blue dress she'd spent 3 weeks sewing. At 24, she was well aware that her full figure didn't match the willowy silhouettes considered fashionable. But tonight she'd foolishly allowed herself to hope that perhaps her careful stitching and the pretty fabric would be enough to make her blend in. She clutched her small beaded reticule tighter, contemplating a hasty retreat to the safety of her millinery shop where she spent her days crafting hats for the very women who now mocked her. The irony wasn't lost on Zara. They respected her skilled hands but ridiculed the body that housed them. "Reckon she'll break the floorboards if she tries to dance." A man's voice joined in, and fresh laughter erupted. Zara fixed her eyes on the exit, calculating how quickly she could slip away without drawing more attention. But as she took her first step toward escape, a commotion at the entrance made everyone turn. Hugh Vance stood in the doorway, removing his hat as he stepped inside. Even from across the room, Zara could see the dust of the trail still clinging to his clothes. The notorious ranch foreman had clearly ridden straight from work to the dance, not bothering with the usual niceties of changing into formal attire. His dark hair was windswept, and his jaw shadowed with stubble, but there was something undeniably commanding about his presence that made the room hush momentarily. At 32, Hugh had earned a reputation across the territory as both an exceptional horseman and a man of few words. Some called him standoffish, others mysterious, but all agreed that the Diamond Cross Ranch had prospered under his management these past 5 years. Zara had exchanged perhaps a dozen words with him in all that time, mostly when he came to town for supplies. She'd never had cause to make him a hat, as he seemed perfectly content with the worn leather one perpetually atop his head. She used the distraction of his arrival to edge toward the door, but her movement caught his eye. For a brief moment, their gazes locked across the crowded room. Zara quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring, and redoubled her efforts to leave unnoticed. "Miss Jenkins," a smooth baritone voice stopped her just as her hand reached for the door handle. "Leaving so soon? The music's only just begun." Zara turned, startled to find Hugh Vance standing before her. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, evidence of years spent squinting into the harsh New Mexico sun. "Mr. Vance," she managed, her voice smaller than she would have liked. I find I'm not much in the mood for dancing after all." His eyes, a striking shade of hazel, studied her face with an intensity that made her want to fidget. "That's a mighty shame, especially when you've clearly put such care into your appearance." Was he mocking her too? Zara searched his expression for any sign of ridicule, but found none. "I've never been much of a dancer," she admitted, which wasn't entirely true. She loved dancing, but had learned years ago that few men were willing to partner with a woman of her size, and fewer still could do so without making her feel like a burden. The band struck up a lively tune, and couples began to fill the floor. From the corner of her eye, Zara could see several people watching their exchange with undisguised curiosity. "Well, Miss Jenkins," Hugh said, extending his hand, "as it happens, I came here tonight specifically hoping to dance. Would you do me the honor?" Zara stared at his outstretched hand, certain she'd misunderstood. "Mr. Vance, you don't have to. I don't make offers out of obligation," he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "I'm asking because I'd like to dance with you." Before she could formulate a response, a high-pitched voice intruded. "Hugh Vance, you finally decided to grace us with your presence." Lucinda Palmer, the banker's daughter, appeared at his elbow, batting her eyelashes. "I've been saving a dance for you." Hugh didn't even glance in her direction. "Perhaps another time, Miss Palmer. I've just asked Miss Jenkins for this dance." Lucinda's smile faltered as she looked between them. "Oh, but surely I'd prefer you excuse us," Hugh said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. He turned back to Zara, hand still extended. "Miss Jenkins?" Heart pounding, Zara placed her fingers in his palm. His hand was calloused but warm, closing around hers with surprising gentleness. As he led her toward the dance floor, the whispers grew louder. "Is he serious?" "Poor man must be desperate. She'll crush his toes." Zara tried to pull away, mortification washing over her. "Mr. Vance, please, this isn't necessary. People are talking." Hugh stopped at the edge of the dance floor and turned to face her fully. "Let them talk. I've never much cared for other people's opinions." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. "And if you'd prefer not to dance, we can walk outside instead, but don't let them chase you away from something you might enjoy." There was a kindness in his eyes that made her chest tighten. It had been so long since someone had looked at her that way, not with pity or mockery, but with simple human decency. "I would like to dance," she admitted quietly. "If you're sure." A smile curved his mouth, transforming his usually stern features. "I'm sure." As Hugh led her onto the floor, positioning one hand respectfully at her waist and holding her other hand aloft, Zara braced herself for awkwardness. She was taller than many men, and broader too. Dancing had always been an exercise in discomfort and apology. But when the music swelled and Hugh guided her into the first steps, something miraculous happened. He moved with the assured confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. His lead was strong but not forceful, anticipating her movements and adjusting to them with fluid grace. For the first time in her memory, Zara didn't feel lumbering or ungainly. Under Hugh's guidance, she felt coordinated, graceful, even. "You've been holding out on the town, Miss Jenkins," Hugh remarked as he guided her through a turn. "You move beautifully." Zara couldn't help the small laugh that escaped her. "It's hardly my doing. You're an exceptional lead." "Dancing's not so different from breaking horses," he said with a wry smile. "It's all about finding the rhythm that works for both of you." As they continued to circle the floor, Zara became aware that people were indeed watching, but not with the derision she'd expected. There was surprise in their faces, and something that looked almost like admiration. Hugh twirled her skillfully, his movements making her dress bell out around her. The sensation was exhilarating. When was the last time she'd felt this free in her own body? The music reached its crescendo, and Hugh executed a final flourish, dipping her slightly. When he brought her upright again, they were standing closer than before, his breath warming her cheek. "Thank you," he said simply. "Shouldn't I be thanking you?" Zara asked, slightly breathless from the dance. "For the pleasure of dancing with the most interesting woman in Silver City, I think not." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Would you care to try another?" Before she could answer, the band started a slower, more intimate waltz. Several couples left the floor, but Hugh made no move to release her hand. Yes," Zara said, surprising herself. "I would." This dance was different, closer, more intimate. Hugh's hand at her waist was steady, guiding her through the three-quarter time with practiced ease. "I've seen you at your shop," he said after a moment. "Your hats are works of art." Zara blinked in surprise. "You've noticed my hats, hard not to. Every lady in town wears them like badges of honor." He guided her through a gentle turn. "Though I suspect few appreciate the skill that goes into them." "That's very observant of you, Mr. Vance." "Hugh," he corrected. "If we're to dance all evening, you might as well use my given name." The presumption that they would continue dancing sent a flutter through her chest. "Hugh, then, and I'm Zara." "Zara," he repeated, as if testing the feel of it on his tongue. "It suits you, unusual, distinctive." As they continued to waltz, Zara caught glimpses of astonished faces around them. Lucinda Palmer looked positively venomous while her group of friends huddled together, whispering furiously. But for once, Zara found she didn't care. There was something intoxicating about being the center of Hugh Vance's attention, about moving across the floor as if she belonged there. For these few minutes, she wasn't the awkward spinster milliner who lived above her shop. She was simply a woman dancing with a handsome man who held her as if she were precious. When the waltz ended, Hugh didn't immediately release her. Instead, he studied her face with those perceptive eyes. Would you care for some punch? It's warm in here. Zara nodded, suddenly aware of how flushed her cheeks felt. As Hugh led her toward the refreshment table, she noticed a change in the atmosphere. People still stared, but now they nodded politely as the couple passed. A few even smiled. Hugh handed her a cup of punch, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Tell me, Zara Jenkins, how is it that I've lived in Silver City for 5 years and never properly conversed with you until tonight? She took a sip to gather her thoughts. We operate in different circles, I suppose. You manage the largest ranch in the territory. I make hats. And yet your hats adorn the heads of every significant lady from here to Santa Fe, Hugh countered. Your reputation extends further than mine, I'd wager. Zara couldn't help but laugh. Now you're just being kind. I'm being honest. It's a trait that's gotten me into trouble more times than I can count. He leaned slightly closer. For instance, if I were being honest right now, I'd tell you that blue dress makes your eyes look like the sky after a summer rain. Warmth bloomed in Zara's chest at the unexpected compliment. Before she could respond, Sheriff Townsend approached, nodding respectfully to both of them. Evening, Miss Jenkins, Vance, he said. Fine night for a dance. Indeed it is, Sheriff, Hugh replied. Been meaning to speak with you, Vance. Heard rumors of cattle rustlers working the southern border of Diamond Cross land. Might want to double your night patrols. Hugh's expression grew serious. Appreciate the warning. I'll speak with the hands tomorrow. As the sheriff moved on, Zara noticed the subtle shift in Hugh's demeanor, the relaxed warmth replaced by the focused alertness of a man with responsibilities. Duty calls, even at a dance, she said softly. Hugh's features softened as he looked back at her. The demands of the job. Speaking of which, I hear you're expanding your shop. Word travels fast, Zara replied, surprised he knew such a detail. Yes, I've purchased the vacant space next door. I'll be adding ladies' accessories, gloves, scarves, that sort of thing. Smart business move. Though I imagine it keeps you busy. Too busy for dances, usually, she admitted. Tonight was an exception. I'm glad for it, Hugh said simply. Then, after a pause, would you care to step outside for some air? It's getting rather crowded in here. Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. As Hugh guided her toward the door with a light touch at her elbow, she caught several speculative glances from the town's most notorious gossips. The night air was cool and sweet with the scent of spring blossoms from the mayor's garden across the street. Lanterns illuminated the wooden boardwalk that ran the length of the main street, casting pools of golden light. Much better, Hugh said, inhaling deeply. Town air always feels too close after life on the ranch. Do you miss it? Zara asked. I heard you came from back east originally. Hugh looked surprised. You've been asking about me, Miss Jenkins? Hardly, she said quickly. Silver City runs on gossip. It's impossible not to absorb some of it, he chuckled. Fair enough. Yes, I grew up in Pennsylvania, came west after the war looking for something different. Did you find it? Hugh was quiet for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the dusty main street, the distant mountains silhouetted against the night sky. I found peace in a way. There's an honesty to life here that was missing back east, no pretenses. A man is judged by what he does, not who his father was. They walked slowly down the boardwalk, the music from the dance fading into the background. And you? Hugh asked. Are you Silver City born and raised? Zara shook her head. No, I came here 6 years ago from Missouri. After my parents died, there wasn't much keeping me there. I'd learned millinery from my mother and heard the territories were hungry for skilled tradespeople. Brave journey for a woman alone. Necessary, Zara corrected, though I won't pretend it wasn't terrifying at times. But Silver City has been good to me, professionally at least. Hugh seemed to catch the qualification. And personally, Zara hesitated, unsure how candid to be. Small towns can be challenging for those who don't quite fit the expected mold. A diplomatic answer, Hugh remarked. If we're being honest with each other, I'd say Silver City doesn't deserve you. The directness of his statement caught her off guard. You hardly know me, Mr. Vance, Hugh. I know enough, he said simply. I know you built a thriving business from nothing in a town that likely didn't make it easy. I know you create beautiful things with your hands that bring joy to others. And I know that tonight, when those vultures inside were circling, You were prepared to walk away with dignity rather than make a scene. Zara stopped walking, genuinely stunned. You noticed that? Hugh turned to face her, his expression serious in the lantern light. I notice a lot of things, Zara, including the fact that half the people in that dance hall don't have the courage or character to do what you've done. Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection that went deeper than the pleasant surprise of their dance. For the first time, Zara felt truly seen by someone in Silver City, not just as the skilled hat maker or the woman who didn't quite fit in, but as a whole person worthy of respect. Why did you ask me to dance? She asked quietly. The truth. Hugh's eyes never left hers, because I wanted to. Because every time I've come to town these past 5 years, I've noticed your dignity, your independence, the quiet confidence with which you conduct your business. And tonight, when I saw you standing alone while those fools whispered behind their hands, I thought it was finally time I introduced myself properly. His honesty was disarming. Zara wasn't used to men speaking to her so directly without artifice or ulterior motive, and the dancing. She pressed. Was that part of your plan too? A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. No, that was impulse, but a fortunate one. You dance beautifully, Zara Jenkins. Before she could respond, the town hall doors burst open and revelers spilled out, laughing and talking. The dance was over. It appears we've lost track of time, Hugh observed. Zara felt a stab of disappointment. The evening had passed too quickly, and now reality would resume. May I walk you home? Hugh asked. The offer was so unexpected that Zara almost declined out of habit, the reflex of a woman accustomed to fending for herself. But something made her nod instead. Yes, thank you. It's not far, just above my shop on Carson Street. They walked in companionable silence, nodding to other townsfolk making their way home. When they reached the small millinery shop with its tasteful window display, Hugh paused at the side entrance that led to her upstairs quarters. Thank you for the dances, Zara, he said, his voice low in the quiet street. It's been the most enjoyable evening I've had in Silver City. You needn't exaggerate, she said lightly, but thank you for rescuing me. It was kind of you. Hugh's expression grew serious. It wasn't kindness. And I'm not exaggerating. He hesitated, then added, I ride into town most Saturdays for supplies. Perhaps next week, if you're not too busy, you might consider having lunch with me at the hotel restaurant. Zara blinked, certain she'd misheard. You're asking to call on me. I believe I am, Hugh said, looking slightly surprised himself. If that would be agreeable to you. A dozen thoughts raced through Zara's mind, doubts, warnings, the voice of experience telling her not to read too much into one pleasant evening. But overriding it all was the simple fact that she wanted to see Hugh Vance again. Yes, she said finally. That would be agreeable. The smile that broke across his face transformed his features from handsome to devastating. Saturday then, noon. Zara nodded, suddenly feeling as shy as a schoolgirl. Saturday at noon. Hugh reached for her hand, bringing it briefly to his lips in a gesture so old-fashioned and courtly that Zara felt her breath catch. Good night, Miss Jenkins. Good night, Mr. Vance, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As she climbed the stairs to her rooms, Zara was certain of only one thing. Silver City would be abuzz with gossip by morning, and for once, she didn't care at all. True to her prediction, Zara's shop was unusually busy the following morning. Women who normally sent their housemaids to collect their orders suddenly appeared in person, lingering over ribbons and feathers while attempting to casually inquire about the dance. Such a lovely event, Mrs. Hollister commented, examining a hatpin with excessive attention. I noticed you and Mr. Vance seemed to be enjoying yourselves. The music was excellent, Zara replied noncommittally, wrapping a newly finished bonnet in tissue paper. Indeed, Mrs. Hollister persisted. I don't believe I've ever seen Hugh Vance dance before. Quite the accomplished partner, isn't he? Zara merely smiled. Your hat will be ready next Thursday, Mrs. Hollister. Will you be collecting it yourself, or shall I expect Betsy? The older woman looked momentarily disappointed by Zara's redirection, but recovered quickly. I'll send Betsy. Thank you, Miss Jenkins. The bell above the door tinkled as Mrs. Hollister departed, passing Zara's closest friend in Silver City, Eliza Thornton, the town's librarian. "I see the vultures are circling," Eliza observed dryly, closing the door behind her. At 30, unmarried and fiercely intellectual, Eliza understood better than most the challenges of being different in a small frontier town. "They've been at it since I opened," Zara confirmed, moving to the workroom doorway. "Come back here before the next one arrives. I've put coffee on." Once they were seated in the small workroom with its organized chaos of ribbons, fabrics, and hat forms, Eliza fixed Zara with an expectant look. "Well, are you going to make me drag it out of you like these nosy bitches, or are you going to tell your oldest friend what on earth happened last night?" Zara couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "He asked to call on me." Eliza's eyes widened. "Hugh Vance." "The Hugh Vance who barely speaks 3 words together at town meetings." "That Hugh Vance, the very same," Zara confirmed, feeling a blush rise in her cheeks. "Well, glory be," Eliza breathed, leaning back in her chair. "When Matilda Prescott burst into the library this morning babbling about you and Vance dancing all night, I thought she'd finally lost what little mind she has left." "We didn't dance all night," Zara corrected. "Just a few dances, and then we walked outside for some air. Unchaperoned." Eliza's eyebrows rose higher. "On the main street, in full view of half the town," Zara clarified. "Though from the way people are acting, you'd think we'd eloped to Mexico." Eliza chuckled. "You have to admit, it's the most interesting thing to happen in Silver City since the Carlson twins got into that fistfight over Lucy Winters." She studied her friend's face carefully. "But enough about the town gossips. How do you feel about all this?" The question gave Zara pause. How did she feel? Confused, certainly, flattered, without question, but beneath those surface emotions was something deeper, a cautious hope she was almost afraid to acknowledge. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "It was just one evening. One pleasant, unexpected evening that probably doesn't mean anything." "And yet he asked to call on you," Eliza pointed out. "Hugh Vance doesn't strike me as a man who does anything without purpose." Zara sighed, tracing the rim of her coffee cup with her finger. "He's coming for lunch on Saturday." "At the hotel restaurant, in public. Well, he's certainly not hiding his intentions." Eliza's expression grew more serious. "Zara, you know I support you in all things, but be careful. Men like Vance solitary, mysterious types, they don't always make the most reliable suitors." "It's just lunch," Zara protested, even as her heart beat a little faster at the word suitor. "And for all I know, he felt sorry for me and is now too polite to back out." Eliza reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "If you truly believe Hugh Vance danced with you out of pity, you're not nearly as observant as I thought. The man couldn't take his eyes off you, and he wasn't looking at you the way one looks at charity case." The bell in the front shop jangled again, interrupting their conversation. "That'll be Mrs. Peterson for her morning veil," Zara said, rising. "You're welcome to stay and help me fend off more interrogations." Eliza grinned. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Besides, I want to see the look on Lucinda Palmer's face when she inevitably slinks in here trying to figure out what Hugh Vance sees in you that he doesn't see in her." "Eliza," Zara admonished, though she couldn't help laughing. "What? We both know she'll be here before noon." "That woman has spent 2 years throwing herself at every eligible bachelor in the county. The fact that Vance chose you over her must be eating her alive." As it happened, Lucinda Palmer did not appear that day, though her mother did, ostensibly to order a hat for a trip to Denver. The interrogation was subtle but thorough, and by closing time, Zara was exhausted from deflecting questions and maintaining her composure. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Zara immersed herself in work, trying not to dwell on thoughts of Saturday or the man who had so unexpectedly upended her carefully ordered life. But every time the shop bell rang, her heart gave a traitorous leap, only to settle again when it wasn't Hugh. By Friday, she had convinced herself that he'd changed his mind, that the clear light of day had shown him the folly of associating himself with a woman the town viewed as an oddity. She told herself it was for the best, that nothing good could come from building castles in the air based on one dance and a moonlit walk. So when the door opened late Friday afternoon and Hugh Vance himself stepped inside, removing his hat with a respectful nod, Zara nearly dropped the scissors she was holding. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice higher than normal. "I didn't expect that is, I thought. I apologize for arriving unannounced," he said, glancing around the shop with interest. It occurred to Zara that despite his comments about noticing her hats, he'd never actually been inside her establishment before. "I had business with the blacksmith and thought I should confirm our arrangement for tomorrow." The fact that he'd made a special trip just to confirm their lunch made something warm unfurl in Zara's chest. "Yes, of course, noon at the hotel restaurant." Hugh nodded, his expression relaxing slightly. "Good, I was concerned you might have reconsidered." "Reconsidered," Zara echoed, his mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I imagine the town has been rather attentive this week," understanding dawned. "Ah, you mean the gossip." She shrugged, trying to appear more nonchalant than she felt. "Nothing I'm not accustomed to." Hugh's expression darkened momentarily. "You shouldn't have to be accustomed to it." The genuine indignation in his voice touched her. "It's a small town, Mr. Vance. People talk. Especially when something unexpected happens." "Like a dance?" he asked, his gaze intent. "Like a dance," she confirmed softly. He took a step closer, and Zara became acutely aware that they were alone in the shop, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the windows. "I've been thinking about that dance all week," Hugh said, his voice low and earnest. "And our conversation after." Zara swallowed, her mouth suddenly dry. "Have you?" "Yes." Another step closer. "I've also been thinking that noon tomorrow feels very far away." Her heart was beating so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "It's less than a day." "Too long," he said simply. Then, as if catching himself, he stepped back and cleared his throat. "But I'll wait, of course. Propriety demands it." Zara found herself uncharacteristically disappointed by his retreat. "Yes, propriety." Hugh replaced his hat, nodding toward the door. "I should let you get back to your work. Until tomorrow, Miss Jenkins." "Until tomorrow, Mr. Vance." After he left, Zara had to sit down, her legs surprisingly unsteady. She'd built a life around practicality and self-sufficiency, around not expecting or needing anything from anyone else, especially not a man. Yet here she was, flustered and breathless from a brief conversation. Dangerous territory indeed. Saturday dawned clear and warm, a perfect late spring day. Zara closed the shop at 11, ignoring the knowing looks from Mrs. Green, who had coincidentally stopped by to pick up her repaired bonnet just as Zara was hanging the closed sign. In her upstairs rooms, Zara changed into her second-best dress, a deep burgundy that complemented her auburn hair and fair skin. She'd made it herself last winter, following the latest patterns from the East, but subtly modifying them to flatter her figure rather than fight against it. As she pinned her hair into a neat coiffure, Zara studied her reflection in the small mirror above her washstand. At 24, she was no longer the insecure girl who had arrived in Silver City. Years of running her own business had given her confidence, if not conformity. Her face, with its smattering of freckles across a straight nose, wide-set blue eyes, and full mouth, was pleasant if not conventionally beautiful. Her body, the subject of so much whispered commentary, was simply her body, strong, capable, and entirely her own. Whether it would be pleasing to Hugh Vance remained to be seen. Zara arrived at the hotel restaurant precisely at noon, steeling herself as she entered. As expected, several diners looked up, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disapproval. But Zara had spent years perfecting the art of moving through public spaces with her head held high, and she employed that skill now as she scanned the room. Hugh was already there, seated at a corner table partially screened by a large potted fern. He stood immediately when he saw her, and Zara was struck again by his imposing presence. Tall and broad-shouldered, with that unruly dark hair tamed somewhat for the occasion, he looked both handsome and slightly uncomfortable in a clean shirt and string tie. "Miss Jenkins," he greeted her, pulling out her chair. "You look lovely." Thank you, she replied, settling herself as he resumed his seat, and thank you for choosing such a discreet table. Hugh's eyes crinkled at the corners. I thought you might appreciate a buffer from the local spectators, though I confess it's as much for my comfort as yours. I'm not accustomed to being the center of attention. No, I would think the foreman of Diamond Cross would be used to all eyes on him. Cattle don't gossip, he replied dryly, and ranch hands have better things to do than speculate about their foreman's personal affairs. The waiter approached, saving Zara from having to respond directly to his reference to personal affairs. They ordered roast beef for Hugh, chicken fricassee for Zara, and then found themselves momentarily at a loss. How has your week been? Hugh asked, breaking the silence. Besides the increased scrutiny, Zara smiled, grateful for the opening. Busy, actually. I received a large shipment of ribbons and trimmings I'd ordered from St. Louis. The summer fashions are arriving, and everyone wants their hats updated. Is that how it works? Fashions change and perfectly good hats become obsolete, more or less, Zara confirmed. Though a skilled milliner can often update an existing hat for much less than the cost of a new one, it's a service I offer that keeps my customers coming back. Smart business, Hugh nodded appreciatively. You've built quite a reputation. Even out at the ranch, I hear the ladies talking about Miss Jenkins' latest creation. Zara tilted her head, curious. There are ladies at Diamond Cross. I was under the impression it was an all-male domain, Mrs. Holloway, our cook, and her daughter Bess, who helps with the washing and mending, Hugh explained. And occasionally the wives of the married hands visit. They all speak highly of your work. That's kind of them, Zara said, genuinely pleased. And what of you, Mr. Vance? How has your week been? Any sign of those cattle rustlers the sheriff mentioned? Hugh's expression grew more serious. Not yet, but we've doubled the night patrols and moved the most valuable stock closer to the ranch house. Can't be too careful these days. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Zara found herself relaxing into Hugh's company. Despite his reputation for taciturnity, he proved to be an engaged and attentive conversational partner, asking thoughtful questions about her business and listening to her answers with genuine interest. What made you choose millinery? He asked as they lingered over coffee after their meal. Of all the trades you might have pursued, Zara considered the question. It was my mother's craft, as I mentioned, but beyond that, I've always loved the transformative power of a well-made hat. It can change how a woman feels about herself, how she carries herself in the world. There's something almost magical about creating something that becomes part of someone else's identity, even if just for a day or a season. Hugh studied her, his expression thoughtful. You see more than hats when you look at your work. I suppose I do, Zara acknowledged. Though it sounds rather grand when put that way. What about you? How does one become a ranch foreman in the New Mexico territory? Hugh's smile was wry. Less purposefully than your path, I assure you. He took a sip of his coffee. After the war, I served with the Union Army. I drifted west like many men, looking for something that didn't remind me of all we'd lost. Worked as a cowhand in Texas for a spell, then Kansas, learning the trade. Came to New Mexico about 7 years ago and hired on at Diamond Cross as a regular hand. And rose to foreman in just 2 years, Zara added, having heard this part of his story before. That's impressive. Hugh shrugged, seeming uncomfortable with the praise. I was in the right place when old Jacobson retired, and I have a good head for the business side of ranching, not just the physical work. Mr. Reynolds, the owner, appreciates that. Reynolds. Zara mused. I don't believe I've ever met him. You wouldn't have. He lives in Denver most of the year, comes down for a week or two each spring and fall, but otherwise leaves the running of the place to me. That's a significant responsibility, Zara observed. Diamond Cross must run to thousands of acres. 20,000, Hugh confirmed. With about 3,000 head of cattle at present. The enormity of his responsibility struck Zara anew. While she took pride in her own business acumen, her shop was a small, manageable affair compared to the vast operation Hugh oversaw. And you enjoy it? She asked. The responsibility, the isolation, Hugh considered the question carefully. I enjoy the work itself, the challenge of it, the tangible results. As for the isolation, he paused, his eyes meeting hers. It has its benefits, peace, independence. But lately I've been thinking it might have its limitations as well. There was something in his gaze that made Zara's pulse quicken. What sort of limitations? The kind that become apparent when a man realizes he's been so focused on building a life that he's forgotten to live it. Hugh's voice was low, intimate despite the public setting. When he finds himself riding into town not just for supplies, but for the chance to catch a glimpse of a certain shopkeeper, Zara's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Vance, Hugh," he corrected gently. "Please." "Hugh," she amended, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything yet," he replied, surprising her with his candor. "I'm merely acknowledging something that perhaps should have been clear to me sooner. That there's more to life than work and duty, that perhaps there's room for connection." The word hung between them, loaded with possibility. Zara had long ago resigned herself to spinsterhood, had built her life around her independence and her craft. The idea that this man, respected, established, and undeniably attractive, might be expressing interest in something more than friendship was almost beyond comprehension. "I've made you uncomfortable," Hugh said after a moment, correctly reading her silence. "I apologize." "I'm not accustomed to that. I don't often know," Zara interrupted, finding her voice. "You haven't made me uncomfortable, just surprised. I'm not accustomed to this kind of attention." Hugh's expression darkened. "Then the men of Silver City are even greater fools than I thought." The unexpected compliment warmed her from within. Or perhaps they simply know better than to court a woman who values her independence above all else. "Is that true?" Hugh asked, his gaze intent. "Do you value independence above all else?" The question struck at something fundamental, something Zara had never fully articulated even to herself. "I value my work," she said carefully. "I value the life I've built. I don't need a husband to complete me or to justify my existence." "Need and want are different things," Hugh observed. "And valuing independence doesn't preclude valuing partnership as well. Is that what you're offering? Partnership?" The directness of her question seemed to catch him off guard, but he recovered quickly. "I'm offering the chance to discover if such a thing might be possible, if you're willing." Zara looked at this man across the table, this unexpected disruption to her carefully ordered life, and found herself at a crossroads. The practical, protective part of her warned against hope, against vulnerability. But another part, long dormant, stirred with possibility. "I think," she said finally, choosing her words with care, "that I would like to continue our acquaintance, Hugh Vance. Beyond this lunch." The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they left the hotel restaurant together, stepping into the bright New Mexico sunshine, Zara was acutely aware of the eyes following them. But for once, she found she didn't mind. Let them look. Let them talk. For the first time in years, Zara Jenkins had something in her life that had nothing to do with business or practicality, something that felt dangerously, wonderfully like the beginning of an adventure. The weeks that followed brought a gradual, subtle shift in Zara's life. Hugh rode into town every Saturday, sometimes staying until Sunday if ranch duties permitted. Their lunches at the hotel restaurant became a fixture of Silver City life, commented upon but eventually accepted as people found new gossip to occupy them. May turned to June, and with the warming weather came opportunities for different kinds of outings. They rode in Hugh's buggy to a picnic spot by the river, where dragonflies skimmed the water's surface and cottonwood fluff drifted through the air like snow. They attended a community gathering where Hugh, to Zara's surprise, revealed himself to be an excellent fiddle player, entertaining the crowd with lively reels that set everyone's feet tapping. Through it all, Zara found herself opening up to Hugh in ways she hadn't with anyone since her parents died. She told him about the long journey from Missouri, about the early days of her shop when she'd barely earned enough to feed herself, about her dreams of expanding beyond millinery into a full ladies' emporium someday. In turn, Hugh shared pieces of his own past, his childhood in Pennsylvania as the son of a blacksmith. His experiences during the war that had left him both physically and emotionally scarred, his gradual healing in the wide, open spaces of the West. "I never expected to put down roots again," he confessed one evening as they sat on the bench outside Zara's shop, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson. "After the war, I thought I'd just keep moving until I couldn't anymore." "What changed?" Zara asked, conscious of his arm resting along the back of the bench behind her shoulders, not quite touching but present. Hugh was quiet for a long moment. "Diamond Cross at first. The land has a way of claiming you if you let it, and then—" He turned to look at her, his expression open and unguarded. "And then there was you." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. In the 3 months since the dance, Hugh had been unfailingly respectful, never pushing beyond the boundaries of proper courtship. There had been brief touches his hand at her elbow, fingers brushing as he helped her into the buggy, but nothing more intimate. Zara had begun to wonder if perhaps she'd misread his intentions entirely, if what he sought was friendship rather than romance. But now, as the last light of day gilded his features and his eyes held hers with unmistakable longing, she knew she hadn't been mistaken. "Hugh," she said softly, his name a question and an invitation. He moved slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Zara held steady. When his lips finally met hers, the contact was gentle, a question rather than a demand. Zara answered by leaning into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel the strong, steady beating of his heart. The kiss deepened, becoming more certain, and Zara felt something shift and settle inside her as if a piece she hadn't known was missing had finally found its place. When they eventually parted, Hugh rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. "I've been wanting to do that since the night of the dance," he admitted. Zara smiled, feeling unexpectedly shy despite her usual confidence. "I think I have too." Hugh's thumb brushed her cheek, the calloused pad rough against her skin. "Zara Jenkins, may I court you properly?" With the intention of, with serious intentions, the formal request, so earnest and old-fashioned, made her heart swell. "Yes, Hugh Vance, you may." Their courtship unfolded through the heat of summer and into the golden days of early autumn. Hugh became a regular fixture at Sunday services, sitting beside Zara in her usual pew and enduring the speculative glances with good humor. They attended the Independence Day celebration together and the county fair in August, where Zara won a blue ribbon for her entry in the needlework competition. In late September, as the aspens in the high country turned to gold, Hugh invited Zara to visit Diamond Cross Ranch. It would be her first time seeing the place he'd spoken of so often, the 20,000 acres that occupied so much of his time and energy. "It's about time you showed me this ranch I've heard so much about," Zara teased as Hugh helped her into his buggy early Saturday morning. "I was beginning to think it might be fictional." Hugh laughed, settling beside her and taking up the reins. "Very real, I assure you. And now that the fall roundup is complete, it's actually presentable. I wouldn't have subjected you to the chaos of last month." As they left the town behind, following the winding road that led northwest into the foothills, Zara felt a curious mix of excitement and nervousness. This invitation felt significant, a blending of their separate worlds. The journey took nearly 2 hours, but the time passed quickly as Hugh pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's history. Finally, they crested a rise, and the full expanse of Diamond Cross spread before them, a vast, rolling landscape of grassland and scattered pinyon pine, with mountains rising in the distance. "There it is," Hugh said, a note of pride in his voice. "Home." Zara took in the view, trying to see it through his eyes. "It's beautiful. It can be harsh too," he cautioned. "Winter blizzards, summer droughts, but yes, beautiful in any season." They continued down the slope toward a collection of buildings nestled in a protected valley. The ranch house was larger than Zara had expected, a substantial 2-story structure of weathered wood with a deep porch wrapped around 3 sides. Surrounding it were bunkhouses, barns, corrals, and various outbuildings that comprised the heart of the operation. As they pulled into the yard, several men looked up from their tasks, nodding respectfully to Hugh and regarding Zara with undisguised curiosity. "Boss," one called, approaching the buggy. He was a weathered man of perhaps 50, with a salt and pepper beard and kind eyes. "Everything all right in town?" "Just fine, Cooper," Hugh replied, jumping down to help Zara descend. "I'd like you to meet Miss Zara Jenkins. Zara, this is Joseph Cooper, my right-hand man and the best wrangler in the territory." Cooper removed his hat, nodding politely. "Madam. Heard a lot about you from the boss here." "All good things, I hope," Zara replied with a smile. "Nothing but," Cooper assured her, his eyes twinkling. "Got us wondering if you were real or if the boss had invented himself the perfect woman." "Cooper," Hugh warned, though there was no heat in it. The older man just grinned. "I'll let Mrs. Holloway know you're here. She's been cooking since dawn once she heard you were bringing a guest." As Cooper headed toward the house, Hugh offered Zara his arm. "Ready to see the rest?" The tour was comprehensive, from the barns with their neat rows of tack to the blacksmith's forge, where a young apprentice was learning to shoe horses under the watchful eye of a master smith. Hugh introduced Zara to everyone they encountered, from the youngest stable boy to the elderly Mexican vaquero who had been with Diamond Cross since before Hugh's time. What struck Zara most was the obvious respect these men had for their foreman. It wasn't fear or mere deference to authority, it was genuine regard. Hugh knew each man by name, asked after family members, showed interest in their work and their well-being. This was a community as much as a workplace, and Hugh was clearly its heart. "They respect you greatly," Zara observed as they walked back toward the main house. Hugh looked surprised. "They're good men, hard workers." "It's more than that," she insisted. "The way they look to you, the way they speak of you, you've earned their loyalty, not just their labor." Hugh seemed genuinely touched by her observation. "Thank you for noticing. I try to run Diamond Cross fairly. Every man here contributes to our success, and every man deserves to share in it." The sentiment, so simply expressed, revealed volumes about Hugh's character. In a territory where many ranch owners and foremen ruled through intimidation and dominance, Hugh had chosen a different path, one of mutual respect and shared purpose. They reached the main house, where Mrs. Holloway, a robust woman with apple cheeks and quick hands, was waiting to welcome them. She swept Zara into the kitchen, chattering about the special meal she'd prepared while shooting knowing glances between her and Hugh. Lunch was served in the formal dining room, a space Hugh admitted was rarely used except when Mr. Reynolds visited. The table could seat 12 comfortably, making their party of two seem almost comically small in the large room. "Does Mr. Reynolds have family?" Zara asked as they enjoyed Mrs. Holloway's excellent fried chicken and biscuits. Hugh shook his head. "A widower. His children are grown and settled back east. He started Diamond Cross after his wife died, as something of a new beginning. Now he's getting on in years and stays in Denver most of the time, leaving the ranch operations entirely to me. He must trust you implicitly." "We've worked out an arrangement that benefits us both," Hugh said. "I run the ranch as if it were my own, and he provides the capital for improvements and expansion. In return, I receive a percentage of the profits beyond my salary." Zara was impressed by the business acumen this revealed. "A true partnership, of a sort," Hugh agreed, though lately, he paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Lately I've been thinking about the future, about what I want beyond Diamond Cross." There was something in his tone that made Zara's heart beat faster. "Oh." Hugh met her gaze across the table. "I've been saving, Zara, for years now. I have enough to buy a decent spread of my own, not as large as Diamond Cross, but enough to start something. Something that would be mine ours if—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung in the air between them. Zara set down her fork, her appetite suddenly forgotten. "Hugh, are you?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, placing it on the table between them. "I had planned to wait until after the tour to do this properly out by the lake where the view is finest, but now I find I can't wait another moment." Zara stared at the box, her breath caught in her throat. Hugh rose and came around the table to kneel beside her chair. Zara Jenkins, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've reminded me what it means to truly live, not just exist. You're strong and kind and brilliant, and I love you more than I ever thought possible. He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me, a ranch of our own, a future together? Tears welled in Zara's eyes, blurring her vision. The proposal was so unexpected, yet in another sense, it felt like the natural culmination of everything that had grown between them since that first dance. "Hugh," she managed, her voice thick with emotion, "are you certain?" "I'm not, I don't know the first thing about ranching, and I've built my business in town, and I'm asking you to marry me, not become a ranch hand," Hugh said, smiling gently. "Your business can continue, we'll figure out the details together. Or if you prefer, we could look for land closer to Silver City. What matters to me is you, Zara. Everything else is negotiable." The tears spilled over then, running down her cheeks unchecked. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Hugh Vance, I will marry you." Hugh's face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if made for her. He rose, pulling her to her feet and into his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. "Mrs. Holloway is probably listening at the door," Hugh murmured against her lips, making Zara laugh through her tears. "Let her," Zara replied, resting her head against his chest. "Let the whole world know that Hugh Vance and Zara Jenkins are getting married." "Zara Vance," he corrected softly, testing the sound of it. "If you like it." "I love it," she assured him. "Almost as much as I love you." News of their engagement spread through Silver City like wildfire. By the time they returned from Diamond Cross the following day, it seemed everyone knew. Zara's shop was inundated with well-wishers on Monday, some sincere, others clearly driven by curiosity to see the ring and glean details about the upcoming nuptials. Eliza arrived at closing time, bearing a bottle of sherry and demanding the full story. "I can't believe you didn't send word immediately," she scolded as they settled in Zara's upstairs parlor. "I had to hear it from Matilda Prescott, of all people. It just happened yesterday," Zara defended herself, still feeling slightly dazed by the rapid turn of events. "I haven't had time to write notes." "Well, you're forgiven, but only because you look so disgustingly happy," Eliza declared, pouring them each a glass. "To the future Mrs. Vance," they clinked glasses, and Zara couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "It doesn't feel quite real yet." "When's the wedding to be?" "December," Zara replied. "Before Christmas. Hugh thinks the worst of the winter weather will hold off until January, and December is a quieter time at the ranch." Eliza studied her friend's face. "And what about your shop? Will you sell it?" The question sobered Zara slightly. "No, not sell. Hugh suggested I might hire a manager, perhaps train someone to handle the day-to-day operations while I oversee the business from a distance. I could still design the special pieces and come to town regularly." "That sounds reasonable," Eliza said, though her tone suggested some reservation. "And you're comfortable with living at Diamond Cross? It's quite isolated from what I hear." "We won't be at Diamond Cross forever," Zara explained. "Hugh has been saving to buy his own land. We'll stay at Diamond Cross for a year or two while we establish our own ranch. He's already looking at properties that would be closer to town." "Ah, so he has it all planned out," Eliza observed, sipping her sherry. Something in her friend's tone made Zara pause. "You don't approve?" Eliza sighed, setting down her glass. "It's not about approval, Zara. I just want to be sure you've thought this through. You've built something remarkable here, your independence, your business. I don't want to see you sacrifice that for a man, even one as evidently besotted as Hugh Vance." "It's not a sacrifice if it's my choice," Zara said quietly. "And Hugh isn't asking me to give up anything. He supports my business, my ambitions. We're planning a future together as partners." Eliza's expression softened. "Then I'm happy for you, truly. I'll miss you, that's all." "I'll still be around," Zara assured her, reaching for her hand. "And you'll be my maid of honor, of course. I'll need you to help me navigate all of this wedding planning." The tension broken, they spent the rest of the evening discussing details: the dress Zara would make, the small church ceremony they envisioned, the reception that would follow. By the time Eliza left, Zara felt a renewed sense of excitement about the path ahead. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Zara created her own wedding dress, a cream silk with delicate lace overlays that emphasized her best features while creating a silhouette that was both fashionable and flattering to her figure. She trained Mary Peterson, a bright young woman with a good eye for design, to take over the day-to-day operations of the shop after the wedding. Hugh rode into town more frequently, sometimes staying several days to help with arrangements and to look over potential properties for their future ranch. They decided that after a brief honeymoon in Santa Fe, they would return to Diamond Cross, where they would live in the main house while continuing to search for their own land. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with a dusting of early snow that transformed Silver City into something from a fairy tale. The small church was filled to capacity not just with their friends, but with seemingly half the population of the town and surrounding area, all eager to witness the union of the respected ranch foreman and the independent milliner. Zara stood in the church vestibule, her hand tucked into Eliza's arm in lieu of a father to give her away. Through the partially open door, she could see Hugh standing at the altar, tall and proud in a new suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion. "Ready." Eliza whispered, squeezing her hand. Zara took a deep breath, her heart full to bursting. More than ready. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Zara would later remember fragments, the warmth of Hugh's hands holding hers, the slight tremor in his voice as he recited his vows, the collective sigh from the congregation when they were pronounced husband and wife, the tender kiss that sealed their union. The reception that followed at the hotel was a joyous affair. Even Mrs. Holloway and several of the Diamond Cross hands had made the journey to town to celebrate with them. There was abundant food, music, and dancing, most memorably, a reprise of their first waltz, which now held such significance for them both. As Hugh twirled her around the dance floor, his hand steady and sure at her waist, Zara caught glimpses of familiar faces, some who had once whispered behind their hands at her expense, now smiling and applauding. She saw Lucinda Palmer, still beautiful but now visibly pregnant and on the arm of a cattle buyer from Texas. She saw Sheriff Townsend raising a glass in silent toast and Mayor Gillespie nodding approvingly. "What are you thinking?" Hugh asked as he guided her through a turn. Zara smiled up at him, secure in his arms and in their shared future. "I'm thinking how strange life is, how one dance can change everything." Hugh's eyes crinkled at the corners. "One dance with the right partner." "Exactly," she agreed, leaning into him as the music swelled. "One dance with the right partner." They left for Santa Fe the following morning, spending a blissful week exploring the ancient city and adjusting to their new status as husband and wife. Hugh proved to be as considerate and attentive a lover as he was a companion, and Zara discovered depths of passion within herself she had never suspected. Their return to Diamond Cross after the honeymoon marked the beginning of their shared life in earnest. The transition had its challenges: Zara's adjustment to ranch life, the careful negotiation of their respective responsibilities, the occasional misunderstandings that arose as they learned to truly live together. But through it all, the foundation of respect and love they had built during their courtship sustained them. Zara rode into Silver City once a week to oversee the shop and visit with Eliza. She found that she enjoyed the rhythm of this new arrangement, the quiet intensity of ranch life balanced by her continued connection to town and her business. Hugh, true to his word, supported her independence while welcoming her full partnership in their home life. In February, Mr. Reynolds made a rare winter visit to Diamond Cross, bringing news that would alter their plans. The elderly rancher, now in failing health, wished to sell the ranch and return permanently to Denver to be near his doctor and his family. He offered Hugh the first opportunity to buy at a price considerably below market value in recognition of his years of service. It's still more than we have saved, Hugh explained to Zara that night as they discussed the unexpected offer. But with a loan from the bank, we could manage it. Diamond Cross is already profitable. We could pay off the debt within 5 years if we're careful. Zara considered the implications. What about our plan for a smaller place closer to town? Hugh ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of deep thought. That's still an option. Reynolds gave me a month to decide. We don't have to take this offer. Zara moved to stand beside him at the window, where the moonlight illuminated the ranch buildings and the landscape beyond. In the 5 months since their wedding, this place had begun to feel like home in ways she hadn't anticipated. The rhythm of the seasons, the community of workers and their families, the satisfaction of seeing their shared decisions bear fruit, all of it had worked its way into her heart. "What do you want, Hugh?" she asked softly. "Truly," he turned to look at her, his expression open and vulnerable. "I want us to be happy. I want a place that can be ours, truly ours, not just borrowed time on someone else's land, whether that's Diamond Cross or somewhere else." "That's for us to decide together." Zara took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Diamond Cross is already more than just borrowed time. It's where you've put your heart for years. It's where we began our marriage." She smiled up at him. "I think we should buy it, Hugh. I think it should be ours." The relief and joy that spread across his face told her she'd made the right decision. "Are you certain it would mean continuing to split your time between here and town?" "I'm certain," Zara affirmed. "Besides, I've been thinking. Diamond Cross could use some diversification. Perhaps a small wool operation, good merino sheep for the fine wool that fetches premium prices. It would complement the cattle business and give me a connection to the textiles I love." Hugh's eyes widened as he considered the suggestion. "That's actually brilliant. The western pastures would be perfect for sheep, and we could start small, build gradually." He pulled her into his arms. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Zara Vance?" "You have," she laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck, "but I wouldn't mind hearing it again." The papers were signed in March, transferring ownership of Diamond Cross Ranch to Hugh and Zara Vance. The transition was seamless. The hands had effectively been working for Hugh for years anyway, but there was a new energy about the place, a sense of permanent investment in its future. Zara's sheep operation began modestly, with a small flock of merino ewes and 2 rams purchased from a breeder in Colorado. She threw herself into learning everything she could about wool production, consulting with experts and reading every manual she could obtain. By summer, the western pastures of Diamond Cross hosted a growing flock of sheep, carefully tended by 2 shepherds Hugh had hired with experience in the wool business. Their first anniversary arrived in December, celebrated with a quiet dinner at home and an exchange of heartfelt gifts. Hugh presented Zara with a beautiful silver pendant bearing the Diamond Cross brand, now modified to include a subtle V for their shared name. Zara's gift to him was news that left him momentarily speechless. They would be welcoming a child in the late spring. "A baby," Hugh whispered, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Are you pleased?" Zara asked, though his radiant expression had already answered the question. "Pleased doesn't begin to cover it," Hugh assured her, gathering her into his arms. "I'm overwhelmed, grateful, terrified," he laughed, the sound joyful and slightly shaky. "Mostly grateful." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Zara found her weekly trips to town more taxing as her condition advanced. In March, they hired a second assistant for the millinery shop, allowing Zara to reduce her visits to twice monthly. Mary Peterson had proven herself an excellent manager, and the business continued to thrive under the arrangement. On a warm day in late May, with wildflowers carpeting the hills around Diamond Cross, Zara gave birth to their son. They named him Thomas Henry Vance after both their fathers, and from the moment he drew his first breath, he held their hearts in his tiny hands. Parenthood brought new challenges and joys, reshaping their routines and priorities. Zara discovered that her organizational skills, so useful in business, served her well in motherhood. Hugh revealed a deep well of patience and tenderness that sometimes brought tears to Zara's eyes. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset while Thomas slept peacefully in Hugh's arms. "When you asked me to dance that night, did you picture any of this?" Hugh considered the question, his expression thoughtful. "Not specifically, no. I just knew I wanted to know you better. I wanted to see if what I felt watching you from across rooms for years was real or just my imagination." He smiled down at their sleeping son. "Turns out it was real, more real than I could have dreamed." Zara leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she had never anticipated when she stood alone at the edge of that long-ago dance. "Who would have thought that a single waltz could lead to all of this?" "I did," Hugh said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The moment you put your hand in mine, I knew we were beginning something extraordinary." In the years that followed, Diamond Cross flourished under their shared stewardship. The cattle operation expanded, the wool business grew into a profitable secondary enterprise, and their family welcomed a daughter, Emma Rose, 2 years after Thomas's birth. Zara's millinery shop evolved as well, eventually moving to larger premises where she established a ladies' emporium that offered everything from hats and gloves to fine fabrics and trimmings. She maintained an office there, but visited only once or twice a month, leaving the day-to-day operations to her capable staff while she devoted more of her energy to family and ranch life. Silver City changed too, growing from a rough mining town into a more established community as the territory moved toward statehood. Hugh served a term on the town council and later on the territorial livestock board, his natural leadership and integrity earning him respect far beyond the boundaries of Diamond Cross. On the 10th anniversary of that fateful spring dance, Hugh surprised Zara with a party at the ranch. He transformed the barn into a dance hall, with lanterns strung from the rafters and a polished floor laid specially for the occasion. Friends from town and neighboring ranches gathered to celebrate, and the Diamond Cross hands and their families joined in the festivities. As the band struck up a waltz, Hugh approached Zara with a formal bow, extending his hand just as he had a decade earlier. "Mrs. Vance, may I have this dance?" Zara placed her hand in his, feeling the same thrill she had that first night. "Always, Mr. Vance." He led her to the center of the floor, and as they began to move together, the years seemed to fall away. They were still the same two people who had found each other across a crowded room, a strong, capable woman who had built a life on her own terms, and the quiet, steadfast man who had seen her true worth when others had not. "Happy anniversary," Hugh murmured as he guided her through a turn. "Which one?" Zara asked with a smile. "Wedding or first dance?" "Both," Hugh replied. "Every milestone that led us here is worth celebrating." He pulled her slightly closer, bending to speak directly into her ear. "But that first dance, that will always be the moment our real lives began." As they twirled across the floor, their friends and family watching with affection, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From ridicule to respect, from loneliness to love, from separate paths to a shared destiny, it had all started with a simple invitation to dance. And what a dance it had been.